Hi guys, good day. Welcome to Robin Hood Diaries. As usual, thank you for joining me. You are welcome, of course. Now, this is the middle part of a 3-episode trilogy of my trip to China in 77, 78. This was a very weird time to be going to China. So yesterday we covered all the fracas of getting into China, and today we're going to be all about China, and tomorrow we're going to be pulling out of China. So, I mean, you're going to hear me name the cities over and over again because I memorized it as a child, and it's the only way I know all the cities. So, blah, 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 blah. And if I am wrong for any Chinese or China experts, please do let me know, although I really don't think I am. This was a very impressionable age. So, as I said before, from Japan we land in, and I'm going to say Peking because that's the only way I knew it. So we arrive in Peking, capital, big city, biggest city at the time. So the minute we step off, it's all like kind of foggy, and you literally feel like you're in another universe. Virtually the minute we step off the plane, we are assigned interpreters and tour guides. Now, these are plants. These are spies for the government. They are not interpreters. They can, of course, speak English and Chinese, but they are spies. They are plants, so remember that throughout the whole thing. I made very good friends with one of them named Mr. Wong, and he was actually the leader of the pack. But he was they're all very polite and gentle with us. So we're in Peking. Of course, assume everywhere we go, they want to show us medical or manufacturing, because remember, I am traveling with a group that is about 2/3 communist, secret communists, American communists, US communists. But the only way to get into China, as I mentioned yesterday, is you have to go under the auspices of medical or business. And of course, they want to show you how everything is perfect and beautiful. So that's how we got in. They did not know there were ulterior motives to see what the hell China looked like after the Cultural Revolution. Now, Chairman Mao had been in as a dictator, or whatever you want to call him, for years. He started the Cultural Revolution, which in effect, among many other things, unlived all the intellectuals and the teachers, and he wanted to make everything a working class. Thereby, everywhere you drove, everywhere, if there were any fields or anything rural, there were little Chinese folks all spread throughout the fields doing their work with speakers everywhere, line to line, screeching either propaganda or Chinese opera. So speaking of which, in Peking, like I said, they want to show you the perfect thing of all the perfect things. So we have to go to a Chinese opera, which lasts about 6.5 hours. And then, of course, this Chinese opera singer sings Old Man River from Showboat. And of course, my mother loses it for whatever reason. Oh my God, bravo, bravo. Okay, so we're still in Peking. We have to see the Forbidden City. Now, the Forbidden City, you have to Google it. It's ancient, it's humongous, it's forbidden. Once you go in there, it's like you're going into like a time warp from 3,000 years ago. Everything just all closed in and just endless, endless. You go into the houses, the temples, the whatever. So that's amazing. So then they want you to see the Great Wall of China. So you go to the Great Wall of China. So we went, obviously. I had these little mini cassette recorders that I had the whole walk on China, and they've been lost. So I had a recording of the whole walking. They only let you walk, obviously, a certain amount. So I have some pictures I shared with you. Some were at temples, some were at the Great Wall. Now you have to remember that this is just opened up to Westerners, so they know virtually nothing about us. So you take out a Polaroid camera and there's a mob scene. They'd never seen Polaroid cameras. So we would take Polaroid pictures, and either they would be fascinated or terrified that you caught their image so whatever. And we also got into a train wreck on the way to the Great Wall of China, but it was nothing serious. It just threw us all over the cabin, or the main whatever. So again, okay, now Nanking is the next city. Very interesting. This at the time would have been kind of like the third largest city along the mainland, Nanking. Now Nanking was a very interesting place to be because it was kind of a third tier city of sorts. It was kind of the city that this tour that I went with, supposedly one was like manufacturing bra wire, the other was like my stepfather was a surgeon. So in Nanking, we see what we want to see, what they want to see, which is sort of a third tier city teetering on sort of development, I guess you could call it, with very little to speak of. So this is a smaller place. The smaller the places, the more my tour wants to see, because they have to go to manufacturing places and they have to go to medical places, but they want to weasel into other places. So in Nanking, we started to weasel, and we had to be very careful with the interpreters because we were still keeping up appearances with them, one of which was very dear to us, and I'll get into that towards the end. So in Nanking, the group wanted to see more rural things. They wanted to go into villages. They wanted to go into homes. So the interpreters had to pick the best village and the most, you know, representative home, modest but whatever. And so they let us go there, again under further supervision, because they have provincial mayors who are narcs. They just kind of govern a little area and tell everybody to be narcs, and they get all the narc information, and then God knows where those people end up. So we go into this typical home, gigantic like iron stove that takes up like the whole living area, and then little modest bedroom or bed, and then of course pictures of Mao everywhere, Chairman Mao, because we've just come out, he's dead, okay? So they don't know what the hell to do. In fact, in Peking, I was in Tiananmen Square, which is where that Chinese man stood in front of the tank in protest. So we were in Tiananmen Square. Then going back to Peking, we had to see Chairman Mao's body lying in state. Again, he had just died. And it was the most somber experience like of my life. They take him to this huge freaking place, and you have to separate into two groups. And you go in a line, and then one group goes this way, one group goes this way in a single file around his casket and out. No words, no looking around, nothing. Somber as hell. So Chairman Mao is in this glass case, all waxy looking, with a Chinese flag laid over him in the uniform that he, as well as all of his subjects, had to wear. So that was bizarro land, and you come out. So we're back in Nanking now, next city. And then I'll jump to another big city. So in Nanking is where we were allowed to kind of drive through the towns, which is really unreal. I mean, they're such small little homes that they set these fold-out tables onto the sidewalk, and they all gather around and eat dinner or lunch or whatever. So you're seeing that, you're seeing parts that, I mean, like from medieval times. Then we have the choice to go see the pandas or the antiques. Of course, my mother has to see the antiques and get some rubbings and jade and whatever. What she's going to do with it, I don't know, to get it out with customs. The other thing about Nanking is that we went by a village, which I mentioned yesterday, which had a gate, a big gate. And everyone in the village had their faces pressed to the bars staring at us. Why? Because the interpreter told us that they had never seen white people, ever. So they were like fascinated. Also in Nanking, there's the Yangtze River, I don't know, some famous river. So I don't know how we ended up in the evening time, but we were somewhere outside in the evening time with, of course, our interpreter, who was back several paces, talking to one of our other travelers, guests. So these two young guys, apparently from a nearby school or college or whatever, come running up to myself, my stepfather, and the guy who organized the tour. Now, the guy who organized the tour actually is the publisher of a communist magazine in the States that has been for 1,000,000 years, called The Call, C-A-L-L. He's the publisher. So obviously he's going to see different things than the normal person sees. So we go to these, typical homes in Nanking, see these amazing little villages. And then in Nanking, these, again, students come up to us in the evening time while we're walking. They come running up to him, the publisher guy, a communist publisher guy, my stepfather, who's a secret communist, and myself. And they start talking in English, asking questions, like rapid fire questions. So the interpreter, spy, sees this from several paces back and comes swiftly walking up to us. And immediately the students are terrified. You could see in their eyes. And they start rapid speaking Chinese to the plant interpreter. And the interpreter goes, "Why aren't you speaking English?" As if, I guess, they had something to hide, or they were trying to explain something that they didn't want, whatever. So those kids who have, I don't know, they just went away. Who knows what happened to them at that time. Next is Shanghai. Now, Shanghai was basically the second largest city. And now it's like Singapore. It's like all kinds of like fancy, modern, futuristic high rises and everything. Not when I went. The biggest hotel was an Art Deco hotel that had been built 1,000,000 years ago, maybe by colonists or I don't know how they would know Art Deco. Amazing building. The food, like these spreads that are supposed to look like roosters, but it's all edible. And the only thing you could drink in all of China was orange soda, tea, or beer, or water. That's it. That's it. Everywhere. Tea. So let's talk about tea. So after the students, God knows what happened to them, and that's Nanking. Now imagine also, before I get into Shanghai, everywhere you go, you have to see their perfect companies, their perfect manufacturing plants, their happy, perfect workers. So outside of Peking or Shanghai, everywhere you go, you have to visit these manufacturing companies, because the guise that we were traveling under was medical and manufacturing. So the weirdest thing about going to these manufacturing plants is, or anywhere where you're visiting a group of people, you walk into the room and it is mandatory applause. This is weird, guys. Everywhere you go where there's a group of people, every one of them applauding. What did we do? Walk in the room? So then you all have to have green tea. This is like massive, major protocol. The applause, the green tea, and then you go see the turbines or whatever. What I found most fascinating was the manufacturing plant. It was huge, had the nursery and childcare section separate but attached. And it's not even a plant, it's a school plant, whatever. And so you walk into one room and there are literally a jillion women doing calligraphy, to set like calligraphy after calligraphy. Oh, hung hao, which means very good, very good. So then you go into the next area and there are a jillion guys playing ping pong. So this is like a thing, I guess. Ping pong was like, I don't know, competitive or a thing, but there are like a jillion ping pong tables. Okay, so more tea, more whatever. Then we get out of Nanking, we're in Shanghai. Like I said, Shanghai with the Art Deco Hotel. Now, there's also what's called friendship stores in Peking and Shanghai. So these friendship stores are only tourists allowed. Not that there were tourists, but like, you know, company people or whatever. The Chinese were not allowed at all into these friendship stores. Now, the one gentle, kind interpreter who was kind of like, he was a former teacher, but that was like kind of under wraps. He asked us, could you get me a transistor radio? It was so, so sweet. And then, of course, there's propaganda papers everywhere, there's posters and all this stuff you can buy. So you come out, every time you exit a bus, there's a mob scene. And they are literally just staring at you. So you break out the Polaroid camera, and then there's like triple mob. And they all, you know, want Polaroids, want to see the camera, whatever. So again, this is in Shanghai. Shanghai is also very interesting because there is this big ass river right in Shanghai where it's obviously like we're shipping, like you'll see this giant ship go by and then, oh, it's serene, and then this giant ship. So there's this long like park along this river right in Shanghai. You wake up and there are literally hundreds of people in that park doing Tai Chi in unison. Tons, I mean, uncountless numbers. In the parkland along the river, every damn morning, all in unison doing Tai Chi. The other thing about Shanghai that is remarkable is that I meant to bring it up, this hat. Everywhere I went, I would want pins, like just pins, you know, souvenirs. So I would buy a bunch of Mao pins, like from the friendship store, and then I would go up to people and say, terrible, and say, would you like, you know, this pretty Mao pin for your pin here? So two of the girls went screaming across the street. They didn't know I was coming up pointing at them. And this is something I did in Shanghai, but in other places throughout the trip. Point, trade. So I have a hat I meant to bring up. It's, you know, those uniform hats that it has literally like 50 or more pins all over it. I discovered later when I got back that some of those pins were medals and awards that they had won for sports and things. I felt terrible because the inscriptions on the back said so, and they felt obliged to give them to me. So they're priceless. So that's Shanghai. Peking, Nanking, Shanghai. Peking, Nang Chao, Wuxi, Canton. Okay, so we're leaving Shanghai. Now we're going to Peking, Nanking, Yangzhou. We're going to Yangzhou. Yangzhou, again, more factories and whatever, a little bit more rural. Again, driving through, you know, with the speakers, you know, screaming propaganda. And Yangzhou. So Yangzhou, again, also want this ulterior motive of these communist tourists that I'm with, want to see, again, more rural, like not rural, but they want to see like more like what's going on in the like secret areas. So Yangzhou, just assume there's more of that, more opera, well, not opera. Wuxi, no, Canton, no, Canton. Okay, so Wuxi is before Canton. So Wuxi, again, more visits. Very beautiful, very serene, much smaller. So again, the visits to the manufacturing. Okay, now here's where my friggin' ass weirdo mother comes in. We go to a manufacturing company that makes silk. Now, the way you make silk is you have silkworms in their little, you know, eggs or whatever, and they float in this little thing, but thousands of them in these little metal things. Float, 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 and then the silk threads are brought up from the floating eggs and wound into strings of silk. My mother decides to steal some silkworms. Okay, so more of that later. So, as if that's not enough, then we go to this really fancy restaurant. So, being the kleptomaniac idiot that my mother was, we go to this restaurant and she decides to pocket an ashtray. But the ashtray happens to be like 1,000 years old, cloisonné, that's put out especially for each table. So then the buses stop before we leave, and they come in and they beg us to tell them who took the ashtray. My mother, of course, did not say anything. They kept us about 20 minutes or whatever more, gave up, and she had her ashtray, which then she's scrambling to hide into socks and shit in my luggage to leave with customs. Bung bung. Yangzhou Wuxi, Canton. Okay, so Wuxi, we just covered Wuxi. Now Canton. Canton, again, large city, a lot of the same, some shopping, some local flavor. The weird thing about Canton is that these interpreters can't talk to them. They can't speak with them because the Cantonese dialect is so different than the Mandarin dialect that they only spoke Mandarin. They were very bad with Cantonese. So we couldn't ask for directions. Like the interpreters couldn't really communicate. Strange. Okay, so again, this one interpreter, like I said, is very gentle with us, very friendly, very calm, and very open. Not too open, but open enough. And we're developing this bond with him, this friendship, this close relationship, particularly my mother, who makes her hair platinum like every 3 days, so much so that it dries out in China in her ponytail and cracks off, literally. I mean, like her platinum ponytail, who Harold Lapin did every 2 weeks, who did Marilyn's hair 1,000 years ago, would come to her house and do her hair. Well, too platinum, too much peroxide, too much bleach, cracked off. So now she has short hair. I mean, like this, I don't know. So we leave Canton and now we're in Wuxi. Wuxi is very serene. There was really not much to see, except there was this, again, medical, we have to justify, right? A bunch of communists who are doctors and whatever. So they take us to this island in Wuxi, and I mean, you know those pan sands, the triangle, very primitive little canoe boats? They're floating by us in this water with this island in the middle. It's medical. My stepfather had to pretend. I mean, he was a surgeon, but. So we go to this island and it's like Health Island, they're doing boil, all this repair. So they show us the pride, the jewel in the crown of this medical island, which felt like leprosy, but it was fancy, kinda. And they showed us the jewel in the crown, which is this guy who had his thumb cut off, and they amputated his second toe and sewed it on to where the thumb should be, and it was working. So that was after the applause and the green tea, we were supposed to be in awe of the bending toe. So we get off the island, and again, we're in Wuxi. This is the last city that we're in. Aside from Medical Island, it's finally we get some countryside, no manufacturing plants, no 1,000 ping pong tables, no 6.5-hour operas, and finally China is drawing to a close. We were there for 3.5 weeks, and it changed my life. I mean, I saw things that no one will ever see. They're all dead. Okay, so we make this bond in closure with this gentle, kind interpreter person. He was a teacher who had kind of been flipped on his end and recruited to be an interpreter, a tour guide. So we have this friendship with him by the end of the trip in China. And we exchange information in the States and in China. Address, ways to, no telephone numbers. And we make a pact to regroup and try to get him out of China. So we're done with all that. We're saying goodbyes to our spies. and we are trained into Hong Kong. This is one of the biggest culture shocks I have ever encountered. I mean, I'm easing into China. I'm 3.5 weeks in China, and then we are dumped into Hong Kong. So I'm going to start tomorrow with our dump into Hong Kong, which was a total nightmare in 3 different ways. And then we will draw our little trilogy of episodes about China to a close. So I hope you enjoyed today. That was within China. I hope I didn't miss anything. I probably missed 100 things. And again, I know this show's long because I really wanted to get to you what it was like being in China right after Mao's death, right after the end of the Cultural Revolution, when China really didn't know what the hell to do. Okay, thanks for joining me for this long-ass show today. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, which is the highlight of my everything. So until then, take care. I love you, and see you tomorrow. Bye.